Welcome. How's everyone doing? Resistance is futile, my friends. Welcome. It is another episode of Mysterious Forces Live, and it is Friday, July 12th, 2019. It's hot. It's hot, kids. We popped up to 111 here up in the high desert north of Phoenix today. Record highs tomorrow. In all fairness, temperatures have been below average up until now. So now we're just having a spike in heat. I'm not sure if the jet stream is being manipulated by the tropical storm that's into New Orleans, where my friend Jiggy from Paranormal Hood is at. So I hope that Jiggy stays safe down there in New Orleans. And we look forward to talking to him soon when he gets back. So welcome to the show. Yeah, it's hot. And so I have a new fan in the studio here. And I think that I've had some episodes where it gets hot, and I have electronic equipment running. I have like self-powered studio monitors, and those stay on, and then you get the lights going, and this little room can heat up pretty quickly. But the new fan is evidence of the weather. It's the monsoon season is starting here, and it's been really windy, and we've had some dark clouds, and it's kind of looked like it was going to rain, but of course it won't, and the wind blows, and so it's humid. It's more humid than normal. And I washed my hair getting ready for the show, and as soon as I brushed it out, it just poof. And that's what my hair does in high humidity. So that's where we're at with the weather here in Arizona, as if you tuned in for that, right? I do want to remind you that I'm going to be at the International UFO Congress, and that's going to run from September 4th to the 8th in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm going to be at booth number 6, and I've been doing work this past week on design of the booth, how it's going to look, and some design element surprises. And I'll be conducting interviews from my booth at the International UFO Congress. I'll do some kind of roving reporter stuff like I did for the Mad Monster Party. And then I'm going to do some other fun stuff as well. So be ready for that in September. And please don't forget that in October, first weekend of October, I'm going to be at Disclosure Con in Pine Top, Arizona, and this will be my second year there. And this is Doc Skinner's event, 1028 Productions, and Disclosure Con will have Mike Barra and several other people there. And I promise not to unplug the power to the stage this year. So be looking for that. And we'll have Doc Skinner on again sometime soon, and we'll talk about that. But until then, I really look forward to talking to tonight's guest. It's William Pullin. I believe, if I'm correct, this is his third or fourth visit to the show. And he was one of the early guests when the show started. And he's someone that's not so well known and so famous that I can't get him on the show. And at least, readily available. And we've had a good relationship with William on the run of this show. He's a great researcher from San Antonio, Texas. He's a ufologist, and he's very fact-based and reality-based, and he maintains a healthy skepticism when dealing with the ufology subject. And we follow each other on social media quite closely. We're both Judas Priest fans. We both like some heavy metal, so we have some musical tastes in common. But I had recently seen that he had posted several pictures and commentary on his page UFO Real on Facebook, and he'd gone to the Roswell Festival in Roswell, New Mexico here in the last couple weeks, week and a half. And so I'm going to talk to him about Roswell. About 2 hours ago, Tom DeLonge tweeted something about this so comical, this hoaxed plan to go storm the gates of Area 51. And I don't know if he's taking it seriously, but we'll discuss briefly the the tweet rather, by Tom DeLonge, and touch on some other UFO news as we see fit. But without further ado, Mr. William Pullin from San Antonio, Texas. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Natasha. Great to be here. Actually, this is our 5th encounter on Mysterious Forces
Yes.
Live. So
wow. See, it's hard for me to keep count, but 5th time. Yeah. No, I'm always glad when you're here. So, what were your initial impressions of the Roswell Festival this year? And did this year have a different tonality to it than previous years?
Of course, it was very well run. The city of Roswell works hand in hand with the UFO Museum in Roswell. The UFO Museum organizes the lectures and presentations. The city runs the actual festival outside the museum. They block off, I think, a 3-block length of Main Street down Roswell that have family-friendly events and pet-friendly events and stuff. But went really well. I got the impression it wasn't quite as well attended as the last 2 years, but I might be off of that assumption. The theme seemed a little more grounded because Kevin Randall returned for the first time in 5 years, and he's actually 7 years, excuse me. And he's definitely a gentleman with a healthy skepticism. So his approach kind of rubbed off on everybody, and I really enjoyed myself. Of course, in Roswell, the researchers are readily available to interact with, and it came off really well this weekend.
That's cool. I saw that you had posted about some of the lectures you attended. Can you give us a little bit of a rundown of what you did here in some of the lectures and what territory they were covering?
One lecture that really impressed me was Kevin Randall gave a lecture, or should I say delivered a lecture, entitled Ufology Without Roswell. It was an hour and a half of observations of other cases, Socorro, New Mexico, Levelland, Texas, the Lubbock Lights, Stephenville, Texas, Rendlesham Forest. Not that he didn't discuss Roswell at all for an hour and a half, which was impressive. Frank Kimbler, he's assistant professor of geology at the New Mexico Military Institute, which is up the street from the museum. He gave his yearly lecture on the efforts to find physical evidence. With his training, his discipline, he can really apply science to the efforts to find evidence for the event. He's got some anomalous material he's testing, but the issue with Frank's work is that he's only able to work during the summer. His spring and fall semesters are taken up with work, so he does the best he can. And the other lectures were the way it's been going the last few years. The lectures have been getting less and less about Roswell and more about other diverse UFO topics. Which makes sense because Roswell was pretty much a cold case by this point. But I attended about 12 or 13 lectures over the course of the 3 days. So always a good time.
Yeah, awesome. I want to give a shout out really quickly to some of the folks that are in the chat room. Mark Torana, Out of Mind is in there. Bug, hi, you guys. Thank you for tuning in. There's a lot of competition happening in this time slot right now. There's a couple other shows, Dark Journalist, Explaining Esoterica, myself. People have really been hitting the Friday night time slot pretty heavily. So that's okay. I love doing this show, and the numbers thing, I know that people will watch it later, so I don't really sweat it, but it's a little light on the alien protocols, of course. Welcome. Yeah, it's just a little light for Friday night, but I get it. It happens. But did you hear any new information that you hadn't known about, or did you get a different perspective on old information that might have been part of your knowledge base that changed the way that you saw some evidence or some of the cases mentioned?
Well, the lecture that Frank Kimbler presented, he had attained some scientific knowledge about some of the pieces he'd recovered at the debris field. 2 pieces showed isotope levels that were seemingly non-terrestrial in nature. But they need better science done to them. He needs a more thorough look at them, and he admitted that himself. So that will probably be some work he does toward the end of this month and then next season. So, or next summer, I should say. Mr. Randall and Don Schmidt, the information they were able to provide me through the last 12 months of research. Actually, I hadn't seen Kevin in a while, but it kind of confirmed some conclusions I already drawn. I spent the 3 days picking Kevin's brain, having not seen him in so long, and we went over. We discussed the Del Rio crash. We discussed MJ12. We discussed some other aspects of the UFO phenomenon that are that I believe are hoaxes, but are believed by some individuals in the community. It kind of confirmed my thoughts on them, being somewhat of a skeptical guy like Kevin is. But there were a few positions that they have that I don't really agree with at this point. But that's part of the fun of it, just the conversation. So it was interesting that the first lecture of the festival, Don Schmidt had to lecture on. I believe his lecture was on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the transfer from Wright Field to Wright-Pat in late '47 when the Air Force became a separate military entity. His partner, Tom Carey, was stuck in Dallas, Texas with the PowerPoint. So Don had to do a old-style lecture for an hour and a half just on the top of his head, and he pulled it off with flying colors. So give me credit, Don. So.
That's amazing. Were there, I can only assume, and I believe I saw in your post, there were tributes to Stanton Friedman. What was that like?
The tribute occurred on the final Roswell panel, which was Sunday afternoon. Alejandro Rojas, he was the moderator for both panels. The Roswell panels were Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon after all the lectures were done. And we had a moment of silence, and he asked all the panelists what their thoughts were on Stanton Friedman, their interactions with him over the decades, and that was a nice, touching tribute. Beyond that, they made some soft observations of Mr. Friedman as the festival progressed. Previous to that, so it was what I expected. I didn't expect them to stop the festival to observe his passing, but they also incorporated his thoughts on his positions. Virtually every lecture discussed, at least in a cursory way, Mr. Friedman's positions, whether they agree with him or not. And I think that was a good way to approach it, just from his professional work. They did a good job. So,
historically, what was your take on Stanton's work? I'm using his first name as if I knew him. I met him a couple of times, so I certainly didn't know him. Mr. Friedman. What's your take on his work? Are you in alignment with it, or were there any areas where you parted ways with his take on things?
The two big problems I had with Mr. Friedman's positions were I feel that the Plains of San Augustine scenario and MJ12 were both hoaxes. But Mr. Friedman both believed in the reality of those scenarios. Maybe not the total reality. Certainly, he believed that the Plains of San Augustine event was directly connected with Roswell. His take on MJ12 seemed to be that there is legitimate information in those documents, maybe not perhaps the entire documents are grounded in reality, but certainly there's information there that could help us. I've looked to the documents for about 20 years, and I just feel they are hoaxed documents. But that was just a difference of opinion. But Stanton, like Mr. Randall, or should I say Kevin, and like Don Schmidt and some other researchers, Mr. Friedman could have a cordial discourse, a gentleman's discussion over a position, and we could just agree to disagree. And that's, in my opinion, that's kind of lost in today's UFO community.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Do you think that this is kind of a turning point for the Roswell Festival, and where, as you mentioned, they can kind of let go of the vestiges of the Roswell case itself and open this up to other topics and lectures on other, broaden the field, so to speak. And I love it, the cockatoo in the background, man. It's the jungle. It's a jungle in here, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
Welcome to South America.
It's one of the birds.
This bird, like, if you don't pay attention to this bird, he gets mad. And he's mad right now because he's not being paid attention to.
Very
anyway, So it just throws me sometimes.
No,
What was I
yeah,
saying?
going to
Oh
the
yeah,
question.
so the Roswell Festival being opened up topically. Do you think that they'll do work to have more what I would call nuts and bolts, reality based, scientific based researchers show up to do these more kind of data intensive kinds of lectures, and maybe not commercialize the event as much as some other conventions? Because that celebration, that festival is kind of, in the town itself. It's not like a convention in a hotel per se, correct?
No, yeah, the festival. I like to say I've never attended the festival because I've actually never gone to an event outside the museum. I've always gone to lectures and that's it. So I guess if I had my way, I would define them as the Roswell Festival is outdoors. It's a conference inside. They've always had the nuts and bolts scientific angle from Kevin Randall, Frank Kimbler, Donald Burleson, Schmidt and Carey, Mr. Freeman, but they've always had some researchers that are somewhat less scientifically grounded or more open to certain possibilities. So in recent years, they've certainly Don Schmidt and Tom Carey have approached different aspects of the UFO issue that are less connected to Roswell directly. They've been researching Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in that scenario quite a bit for about 4 or 5 years now. So they've kind of moved on to a point. Kevin Randall certainly has for about 20 years. That bird's going crazy. Yeah,
He's driving me crazy.
he's outrageous. He wants to hear the Judas Priest. That's what it is. So,
exactly.
but no, they're. I think that aspect will always be there. They will always have speakers that will have a nuts and bolts approach. They'll always have speakers that will be somewhat more speculative. And I think that diversity is healthy. I think that's a good thing. So,
Yeah, I do too. Do you think that experiencers or people who have eyewitness testimony or subjective experiences, I guess that could be wrapped into the experiencer
sure.
label. Do you think that those folks have a place at this event, or do you think that those more subjective, less scientific areas are best presented in other venues?
Perhaps a little of both. I mean, the first Friday of the festival, they didn't have a Roswell panel. They always have an abduction panel, which is an opportunity for abductees or experiencers to talk about their testimony, their experiences. It was moderated by Daryl Sims, hosted. It featured Mike Barra, Travis Walton, Kathleen Martin, Yvonne Smith. So they've always had that aspect where they have an opportunity, they give an opportunity for experiencers to talk about their experiences. So that's always been there. And now in today's environment, that's certainly being explored more and more. So in Roswell, they've got their bases covered. They have a place for the nuts and bolts, and they have a place for the experiencers. So I think that's a good thing. That's probably why I push the festival so much on my blog, because they have both aspects covered pretty well. And they have researchers from both angles there for the public to talk to, and I think diversity is only a good thing, since there doesn't seem to be one angle that explains the entire enigma. Therefore, having a diverse approach pays off. So they got their bases covered in Roswell.
That's awesome. So speaking of nuts and bolts, on the practical side, is it easy to book a room there? Is there good food in town? Are the accommodations? What's your opinion on the local accommodations and the local culture in general?
There's plenty of rooms to go around. You just have to book them about 5 months in advance. As far as places to go, there's great food in Roswell. There's great food in Roswell within about a mile of the museum. And I think that's done on purpose. So great locally owned restaurants, and I'm a big fan of that, helping the local economy, especially in today's environment. And accommodations, a pretty wide range from mid-level hotels to some higher-end hotels, and then the basic, budget in type deals. So not a shortage, but when you're trying to plan for the festival, you got to plan far ahead, because the population of Roswell at last count, I believe, was about 55,000, and it almost doubles that weekend. Because of the festival. So it pays off to plan ahead of time. But even having said that, there were still rooms in town available. So if we do it right, it's a good festival to go to. And price wise, it's one of the least expensive festivals to go to.
Cool.
It's a $5 entry fee to get to the museum. After that, everything's free. So you can't beat that.
No, that's a great price. What's your favorite restaurant in Roswell? Where's your go-to?
Oh, Big D's Downtown Dive. It's on Main Street, about 3 blocks north of the museum by the old courthouse, and delicious.
Awesome.
Yeah, I give it 10 stars out of 5. So
Awesome. Hey, it doesn't get any better than that.
yeah.
I'm going to look into the chat room here. Mark Tarana, yes, I see your question. He wants to know, what are your thoughts on the Wilson leak and all the
I have
recent
not.
hubbub?
Yeah, that's a big deal. I'm still in the process of looking at those documents. I'm still looking at them thoroughly. I have not drawn a conclusion yet, or looked at them enough to feel comfortable taking a position. So I'm very cautious with documentation. There may be snippets of valid information there, but certainly in the history of the UFO phenomenon, there have been documents put out that have not held up under scrutiny. I think of MJ12, some other documents that come out that may have snippets of valid information, but you have to really look at it dispassionately, objectively, and say, okay. And for me, the big thing is provenance. Where did it come from? Could I foil those documents and recover them? Is there some way to find out where they originated from? And I try to look at the individuals that wrote the documents and go from there. So I'm still in the process. They were released before I went to Roswell, and I was planning to go on one of the trips. So time-wise, I have not had a chance to really sit down and look at them thoroughly. I'm kind of doing that now. So, but Mark's in my group, U for Real, so I'll contact him and let him know. But at this point, I'm still, I haven't decided yet. I'm still up in the air.
So what's your criteria on whether you believe documents authentic or not?
I need to be able to find the provenance, backtrack it to its original source. I need to do background checks on all the individuals mentioned in the documents, particularly the ones that supposedly wrote the document, and find out if there are any red flags. If there aren't any red flags, I will take that into consideration. And then the information contained in the documents, I try to find out if that attaches itself to any other information. Are there any other documents or events described in those documents that may or may not be valid? And if they're listed in that, that's troubling. When examining the MJ12 documents back in the 90s, which one is it? The Eisenhower briefing document mentions the Del Rio UFO crash. I believe the Del Rio UFO crash is a hoax. It's a single witness case, and Robert Willingham, who is that witness, has been proven to be he proved to have given false information by his military background. So if a hoax case is contained in a military document, I tend to believe that document also is a hoax. So that's kind of the angle I take. Of course, I'm very comfortable admitting I may be wrong. I just don't know. So that's why I take my time and take a cautious approach to see what transpires. We'll see what the future holds. I'm very cautious about those things, though. I'll probably know in a few weeks after having really looked at these things and see what kind of position I take, and then I'll probably write up about it in my blog. So,
yeah, I look forward to that analysis. Mark did add that he thinks that it's looking like the documents came from Edgar Mitchell's files, which is something that Richard Dolan had concluded as well in some videos that he had done on it. I want to switch gears slightly, and maybe the zoo in the background is going to settle down a little bit. Oh, my God.
Outrageous.
Where's Dr. Doolittle when you need him? About 2 hours ago, probably closer to 2.5 hours ago, actually, Tom DeLonge issued a Twitter statement, and it's in reference to this joke event that was posted online about storming Area 51.
Yeah.
And he gives some commentary on the other things. So I'm going to scroll down. I'll read to you the entirety of this. It's in 7 parts, but it was written well, and it's broken down into sections, so it's easy to read. And I just want to get your hot take on it because I don't know who's talking about it. So this show might be one of the first to be commenting on this specific tweet by Mr. DeLong. He wrote, storming Area 51 won't do anything of any value. The secrecy is a bureaucratic issue, a corporate issue, not an us versus them issue. We need legislation to be signed that changes the way this particular subject is classified. They are operating without oversight, and that's wrong. The way special access programs work really do help our country. But over 70 years, the system allowed this subject to sink into an invisible hole. Look how Trump keeps trying things and gets shot down by judges or Congress or the system in general. Not even the president can do what he wants. If there's an existing law, the only thing that can change it is another law. So we need Congress to change the law on this one and probably open any existing information, technology, and biological treasures so the world can learn. This is section number 4. And also have it managed by elected leadership. Over time, a group of the self-labeled most educated, most elite, and most benevolent have owned this and what considered our best interest. And I believe in the 1940s, they were right. But times change, and now there's a major distrust of the government and major ignorance on the part of us civilians on how national security works. Great grammar there, Tom. That's the reason I am making Secret Machines feature films, to bring everyone up to speed, per se. At TTS Academy, he's using the Twitter handle, has spent the last year and a half briefing the Senate, multiple committees in Congress, and helping glue the DOD, IC, and Congress together on this. And guess what? And here's the last section, number 7. Yes, we are getting close to organizing this issue in the appropriate way. The Senate is energized, all caps on that one, and probably losing sleep the way I was when I was brought into all this. It's a big deal, and I am super proud of TTSA and how it has succeeded in influencing national security law. I know that was a lot. It's a lot to unpack. If you have questions about specific sections, let me know. But what's your hot reaction to that one?
Well, first, the information, whatever's going on at Area 51 is very compartmentalized. And it's obviously a high security area. The military does not take kindly to high security areas being advanced upon by civilians, let's say. I'm trying to use a good term for that. So that whole scenario about a group of people getting together and trying to band together and enter Area 51, that may not go well.
It's a joke. It's something someone posted as an idea, but it's a joke. It's like not even a hoax, like they're trying to actually get people to show up. Like that was just tossed out as some kind of pseudo onion-like idea.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in this community, some people will take that to heart. They'll think it's legitimate. Yeah, that can be troubling. So, it's my personal position has always been that the government or the military is not going to. They have no motivation to disclose anything they have. They don't. I can't imagine the public forcing the military and the government to disclose what they have. So I don't know if the TTSA's efforts will bear any fruits. I don't know. I'm very cautious about this whole TTSA, Pentagon program, Navy video, this whole scenario that's been going on for several years because the information is being given out very slowly. So I'm very cautious. I'm letting things develop in front of you before I'm just letting things develop and see what transpires. DeLong's take, he's intimately connected with TTSA, so clearly he's going to be proud of their efforts. He's going to tout their efforts. He's going to tout what they're trying to do. As to whether it bears fruit or not, I don't know. At least in the UFO community, it's become another reason to be polarized. You're either pro TTSA or anti TTSA, and I'm cautious about their efforts. I'm not declaring my position. I'm just saying, okay, let's see what transpires. And I have been given some pushback for that effort, and as if not declaring a position is a bad thing. I've been accused of being anti-TTSA, hoping they fail. And I've had to say several times, I never wish I don't wish the scenario of failure on any UFO group, on any group that's attempting to further this field. I wish them luck, whether I agree with their approach or not. But it pays to be cautious about this scenario. So, have they been briefing Congress? Have they been briefing government officials? I don't know. I hope it's on the up and up. I'm not sure if it is or not. So, but he is right in one way. Change would probably be a slow thing. The issue of disclosure, the only way I would think that it would actually transpire quickly would be if an event took place. The old saying, well, it would take a UFO landing on the White House lawn. They may be right. It may take an event that could not be covered up. It may take an event that the government and the military could not deny. Above and beyond that, I think it would take a slow change in the way government works, a slow change in the way voters would apply their given right to change things and motivate change, and maybe that would transpire in the future. But at this point, it seems like it's very slow the way it's going. So historically, I've been doing this for almost 32 years. We've been here before. This idea that disclosure is going to transpire pretty soon. We've been here every so often, every few decades. This has happened before, and it hasn't happened. I'm kind of I'll believe when I see it. I hope it's right. I hope it does happen. That would be great. But will it happen? We'll see. I'll believe when I see it. But Mr. DeLong he's clearly vocalizing his take on the scenario, and I take it as it is. I mean, he's vocalizing his ideas. So cautious. Cautious.
Right. Do you think if TTSA was sitting on a cache of information and or evidence, and they were doing some kind of a slow disclosure kind of thing to draw it out, gain attention, and also generate revenue through media such as television shows, film, whatever else that can monetize? Do you think it's unethical for them to sit on that cache and trickle it out that way? Do you think they have an ethical obligation to release all the information they have all at one time, put it all out on the table, and then let everyone do the hard work of unpacking all of those elements?
Well, they've certainly been giving out the information in a very measured way, almost as if they're trying to control the narrative, control the conversation. They make an announcement, let it pass, and then another announcement comes, and they slowly are releasing things. I have yet to see anything that we could all look at and gain some perspective on. I would advocate that. I mean, at some point, we need to all look at it, and I mean, as a community, and including the scientific community, we need to all look at the information and data and whatever evidence they have, whether it's organic, whether it's physical, whether it's mechanical, and come to a consensus as to what this means. We need to all examine it as a community, as a species, really, and decide what this means for us as a species. This slow giving out of information leads me to believe that there's an issue, there's an agenda there, and they are conducting themselves in a certain way to further that agenda. I could be wrong, but I think at some point, whether it's sooner or later, whatever information or evidence is out there needs to be looked at by all of us at some point, and that would mean a release of it. Whether that will happen down the road after this slow process, or whether that will at some point happen in one cash drop and we get to see all this stuff at once, either scenario, we need to all look at it, and we're not there yet. The different stories that have come out in the New York Times and some other media outlets, I don't find any of the information groundbreaking. I find it's just kind of the same. It's interesting information, but I don't think it's really anything that was not suggested by some individuals in the community. Take the initial announcement that the Pentagon had a program investigating UFOs. I would have been more surprised if they announced that the Pentagon or the military was not investigating UFOs. Documentation over the decades has shown that the military is investigating UFOs. So when they announced that, I thought, well, that's nothing new. That's something that's been kind of proven for several decades. But in the community, it was taken like, well, this is a momentous occasion. No, it wasn't. It was the confirmation of what a lot of researchers already knew. So we'll see what the future holds. Should be interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Have you been watching the Undisclosed series?
Oh, I have. I usually watch them a week after they come out.
Okay.
I watch and observe the media, the social media interactions, the commentary that's going on, and then about a week after the episode airs, then I actually watch it. It's been interesting, but I take the position that okay, this is still a television show. It's not a documentary. It's still a TV show. So it's interesting. It's got a high production value. They've done a good job of that. But for me, it's part and parcel of this whole scenario. It's still a slow, I guess, build up. Maybe that's the wrong term. A slow process of revealing of what information they have, and I'm taking it as it comes, and maybe at some point we'll have all the information that way we could actually process what this whole scenario means. But because the information being given out slowly and deliberately, it's very difficult to declare a position or come to some conclusion when you're not able to look at all the data. It makes our conclusions incomplete. So I'm holding off to see what happens. But it's a well-produced program at the very least. So if it helps in the long run, then it's a good thing. But will it help? I don't know. We'll see. Cautious.
I think, yeah. I think it's kind of a halfway point between something like Ancient Aliens, and other shows that use a story trope of these big questions, big dramatic questions that they keep asking but will never be answered, and then in the end ask you to wonder and speculate. I mean, I get sick of that shit. So I like it that there's a good witness. I like it that there's good witness testimony, people who are directly involved in some of the recent news stories and associated with the evidence that's been presented. But it still somewhat falls back on that trope of asking more questions that there never is quite an answer to, or that you're left with the witness testimony. You're left with the testimony of someone who ran the radar. And, I don't know. Other than seeing the actual radar tapes or holding them or something I don't know how much further that's going to go. And they certainly have teased a lot of people with this idea that they have metamaterials or analysis of metamaterials and other forms of evidence. And personally, I think if they have a cache of data or information or evidence, that they should release it all at once. And, maybe unpack it over a series of days, but do it all at once and do some kind of active disclosure. And I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm just skeptical of their profit motive. That's all. Anytime that something is for profit, that just brings a level of skepticism in for me. Not that scientists and researchers shouldn't make money. I believe that they should be paid for the work. I think they should financially benefit from their long hours of research and work and analysis. It takes a lot to really do good, solid research. But at the same time, I don't know, film, TV, and all this stuff, I don't know. It's just, it's somewhat sketchy. It's a mixed bag. I think there's some positive things that come along with TTSA, and I think that there's some questionable things. Do you think they're fear-mongering at all? Some people have been tossing that one out there, including Richard Dolan, just posing the question whether TTSA is fear-mongering. As we close out the show, do you think that they're doing any of that, or do you think they're steering clear?
Well, they're certainly painting the UFO issue as something that's a national threat. While there's nothing to support that conclusion, all the data we have over the past decades, they haven't invaded. They haven't attacked us directly. So I don't know where they're getting the national security issue from. And and going so that Dolan may be right. They may be fear mongering that on some level. And I agree with you about the prophet. The prophet issue is a worrisome issue. That's certainly a red flag. And what the show presents is testimony. We've had that before. We've had programs that have profiled individuals that have given testimony about their UFO sightings. We've had this before. There's nothing different. They've claimed to have, you're right, they have claimed to have metamaterials. They claim to have evidence that's physical in nature that can be examined. Well, we need to examine it. It needs to be opened up and so that we can all examine it, not just one group. I don't trust one group to examine what they may or may not have. That's been going on for 70 years. That's called the U.S. government. So it's the same scenario. But I'm with you. I'm cautious. We'll see what the future holds. But at this point, I'm not enamored with the effort. But if it, I would love to be proven wrong. I would love to be proven wrong, and disclosure actually happens. But I'll believe when I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to close the show out with a question from the chat room. Unidentified seems to be threat. Mark Tarana says. And this last question does come from Mark. And he says, Australia has a history of many great UFO cases. What would you say, William, is the most compelling Australian UFO case?
Gosh, I'm drawing a blank. It popped in my head. The pilot he was flying his aircraft from the southeastern tip of Australia, flying to Tasmania, and he reported coming across a UFO. He called the radio tower to report what he was seeing, and his plane and the gentleman disappeared. I'm drawing a blank with the name. I'll probably think of it the minute we're off the air. But to me, that's the most compelling case. The issue with the case is it's a single witness, although the gentleman in the radar tower makes a single witness in a sort of way because he was talking to the pilot. The Valentin case, that's his name. Last name was Valentin. So the plane may have crashed into the ocean, but he was reporting an unidentified flying object interacting with his aircraft. So to me, that's always been a fascinating case because no wreckage has been found, no body, no oil, no gas, nothing. So the extraterrestrial explanation is still on the table because of that. So Frederick Valentin, that's the name. To me, that's a fascinating case. But there are several others on the books that occurred in Australia that are all multiple witness, and they have some interesting abduction cases too, interactions with UFOs. So Australia has a treasure trove of cases that a lot of Americans are unaware of. So
that's awesome. Thank you for that case. I love it, and I'm sure that Mark is happy to have such a comprehensive answer. William Pullin, thank you so much. Are you going to be making any appearances anywhere, doing any lectures, or doing anything in the ufology field in the near future that people need to know about, or how can they find you on Facebook?
You can find me on Facebook at my interactive UFO group, which Mark is a member of, entitled U for Real, a Historical Review. You can find me on my personal blog, also on Facebook, cleverly entitled William Pullin. As far as lectures, I'll be appearing at the San Antonio Paranormal Fest 2019 in September here in San Antonio, and I'm negotiating starting tomorrow appearing at the another UFO conference here in town, which will be 2 weeks before that. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But the Paranormal Fest should be interesting because I'll be the only UFO guy there. So I'll be by myself. Everybody else is talking about ESP and remote viewing and cryptozoology and stuff. So I'm kind of the nuts and bolts UFO guy. So I might be, my head will be sticking out a little bit. So should be fun.
That's all right. You should come out to the International UFO Congress sometime.
I've thought about that several times. Something's always come up, but one year I'll get out there. So yeah, we can hang out and spend some time.
You should, because I'm going to have a booth number 6 at the International UFO Congress, September 4th through the 8th in Phoenix, Arizona. Oh, I'm hopelessly self-promoting. William, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is visit number 5, and I hope that we have many, many more discussions as the show keeps rolling on.
Well, we surely will. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you for your time, William. And so that's William Pullin. laser. You know, it's crazy. I don't even point that thing directly into the lens of the camera. It just kind of does that. It's very cool. It's very cool. I never get sick of it. I'm a child. I'm a fucking child. That's the deal. Anyway, hello to my friends, Jimmy Pearson, Jiggy, CW Chanter, Explaining Esoterica. Tomorrow night, BB Tinsley and Kelly Farmer. We're calling it Girls Night In, and we may have a couple of other surprise guest people on the panel. So tune in tomorrow night. Jiggy, be safe. Everybody be cool. And we'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Disclosure Con, first weekend of October, Pine Top, Arizona, International UFO Congress, booth number 6, September 4th through 8th. I love you. Bye.